Records that will never be broken. By beating the Rams this Sunday, Tom Brady set the all-time career wins record with 201. This record alone will never be beaten, and whatever he finishes his career with will absolutely never be beaten. He's just passed Manning and Favre with 200 and 199 wins respectively. The next best behind them is John Elway with 162 wins, and the next best active is Drew Brees with 135 wins. By the time Tom Brady retires, there's not going to be anyone in history close to him, let alone any active player that even stands a chance of beating him. By the time he's done, he's going to end up outwinning all but about 5 head coaches in NFL history. Brady will likely get a few more wins this season. He's got the Ravens, Broncos, Jets, and Dolphins left to play, and apparently he's pretty good in the postseason. So let's just say he finishes this season with 205 wins. Following this season, he's got 3 years left on his contract, and let's assume he retires after those 3 years. And now we're going to assume he gets 10 wins a season, because that's a pretty safe bet for the Patriots considering Brady actually averages 12 wins a season. So, with 10 wins a season, add the 205, he's going to finish his career with 235 wins. That's not even including the playoffs, and obviously that's just hypothesizing, but 201, like I said, is never going to be broken. And here are some more records I think will never be broken. On the topic of wins, another record that will never be broken is Don Shula's career wins as a head coach. Shula won 347 games, 328 of those in the regular season, both of course good for all-time records, and although he wasn't as prolific in the postseason, only winning 19 games, he's still tied for the all-time record in appearances in the Super Bowl by a head coach with 6. To put it into perspective, if the next closest coach, Bill Belichick, was going to beat him, he'd have to coach until he was around 80 years old and continue doing just as well as he has been doing. Something I don't see ever being beaten considering the way the game is played nowadays is the 1977 Atlanta Falcons defense's record for points allowed in a season. And by extension, for the same reason, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defense who set the record in a 16-game season. The Atlanta Falcons allowed the least points since the AFL-NFL merger with 129 in a 14-game season. That's 9.2 points per game. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens have it for a 16-game season, allowing 165. The NFL is becoming increasingly more offense-orientated, so there is no way the points allowed per game record of the Atlanta Falcons is ever broken. To put it into perspective, this season after 12 games, no team has allowed less than 194 points already. And on top of that, the all-time points allowed per game record will absolutely never be broken, as that stands at 1.6 points per game when the Green Bay Packers allowed 22 points in a 13-game season. Out of all these records, I feel like these are the safest. Jerry Rice is the greatest football player in NFL history, and his records are simply untouchable. The next best players aren't even close. He has 7,000 more yards than the next best receiver in Terrell Owens. He has 200 more receptions than Tony Gonzalez and 41 more touchdowns than Randy Moss. The difference between Jerry Rice and the next best players is one player's very good career. 200 receptions, 7,000 yards and 41 touchdowns. And the craziest thing is players are rarely on pace to beat Jerry Rice's record, let alone looking like they're going to play the 20 years they'd have to beat it. On the topic of playing 20 plus years, nobody will ever play more seasons than George Blanda. Blanda played quarterback for the Bears, Colts, Oilers and Raiders. He was drafted in 1949 and retired in 1975 after 26 seasons in the NFL. Blanda is 61st all-time in career passing yards and is one of a few guys to hold the record for most touchdowns thrown in a single game. He's also 7th all-time in points scored and 1st by a long shot in extra point attempts. His entire career, Blanda wasn't just a quarterback, he was a kicker as well. In his final stretch of his career with the Raiders, he was exclusively a kicker, every now and then subbing in as a backup quarterback when needed. He joined the Raiders at 40 years old and retired at 48 years. Nobody in the modern era is ever going to beat that. To finish off, here are 3-1. Brett Favre's consecutive start streak is incredible and won't be broken anytime soon. 297 consecutive regular season starts, which extends to 321 in the playoffs. The next closest is Peyton Manning with 208 and 227. The closest active player is Eli Manning, and he would have to play another 6 seasons to come close to breaking Favre's record. That would make him 41 years old. Is it impossible? No. Is it likely? Absolutely not. Emmitt Smith will likely sit atop the career rushing leaderboards for a very long time, if not forever. He's the Jerry Rice of running backs. He leads in yards, touchdowns and attempts, and he leads the rest of the guys by quite a distance. His records are probably as unbreakable as Jerry Rice's are, but they're not seen as invincible for one key difference between the two players. Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver there ever has been and ever will be in NFL history. Emmitt Smith isn't the best running back there's ever been in the NFL. His records are probably just as unreachable, but because he's not the best there ever has been, we allow ourselves to think that maybe at some point somebody will come along and break them. Leading on from there, I believe that Barry Sanders is the best running back in NFL history, although I will admit it probably just as easily could be Jim Brown. Rarely do you see a player go to the Pro Bowl every single year they were in the NFL, and even more rarely do you see a player that was named All-Pro every single year they were in the NFL. Out of all the records Sanders ever set, his most impressive is this, and I'm going to have to look down because I can't remember all the numbers. In 1994, Sanders ran the ball 331 times for 1,883 yards, adding 44 receptions for 283 yards. That season, Barry Sanders did not fumble the ball once. That of course set the record for the most rushing yards ever without fumbling the ball, and was just behind Marshall Faulk's record for all-purpose yards, but Faulk did it with 800 plus receiving yards. So there you have it, those are the records I think will never be broken. However, if we assume that life on Earth goes on for 1 million more years or so, and that the NFL is around for even just a fraction of that time, it's probably quite likely that at some point these records will be broken. However, that's not happening in our lifetimes or your children's children's lifetimes.